Welcome or welcome back, and thanks for being here. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. Now, mothers are supposed to love, cherish, and protect their children at all costs. They're supposed to be the one person above all else whom you can turn to in life. But today, I'll be talking about 5 cases of children who had moms who were the extreme exception to that rule. These kids had some of the worst mothers to ever walk this earth. The first downright horrible mother is Connor and Brinley Snider's mother, Lisa Snider. She not only killed her children, then blamed them for their own deaths, but she also did some other highly disturbing things inside their home. Connor Seth Snider was born on October 12, 2010, and his sister, Brinley Louise Snider, was born sometime in 2015. Both were born in Allentown, Pennsylvania, to their mother, Lisa Snider, and their father was not in either of their lives. The children were very close, and Connor was the best big brother to Brinley. But on the afternoon of September 23, 2019, their family would be destroyed. Lisa had gone down to the basement of the family's home, which was located on Route 143 in Albany Township, Pennsylvania. The children had been down there making forts, according to her, and she went down there to see what they'd like for dinner. But when the mother stepped into the basement, what she saw was absolutely shocking. Her 2 children, Connor and Brinley, were hanging from a support beam by their necks, with 2 chairs nearby knocked over. The siblings were hanging from opposite ends of a plastic-coated wire dog lead. Lisa dialed 911, and when paramedics arrived, both children were found to be unconscious and in cardiac arrest. They were rushed to a nearby hospital, but just a few days later, on September 26th, both Brinley and Connor would be pronounced dead, just 14 minutes apart. The children's mother, Lisa, told authorities that her kids had come home on the afternoon of September 23rd, and shortly after, Connor asked his sister, Brinley, if she wanted to go down to the basement to make a fort. He also asked his mother if he could borrow the dining chairs and the new dog lead that she had recently bought for this fort building, to which she agreed. Lisa claimed that she had then gone outside to walk the dog. She was only out there for about 10 minutes, and when she had come back inside, that's when she found her children hanging. But even when she discovered her son and daughter in this state, Lisa told police that she had only tried to lift Connor and 40-pound Brinley briefly before her anxiety spikes caused her to sweat profusely, and she gave up on trying to rescue her children. She'd then gone upstairs and contacted emergency services. And the thing is, Lisa remained upstairs for the entire time after that. The whole time she was on the phone with 911, waiting for paramedics to arrive, she never once went back down into the basement. Which was the very first thing that made authorities rather suspicious about how exactly Connor and Brinley had gotten to be in the position where they were found. And so an investigation was opened into their deaths. During the course of this, authorities seized multiple electronics and 3 cell phones from the home. They also took the dog lead that the siblings had been found hanging from. And as detectives further questioned Lisa, she would say that her 8-year-old son Connor was bullied and hated going to school. She claimed that other kids picked on him because he was overweight, had a speech delay, and was slower to grasp things. She said that because of this, Connor had recently been starving himself and had actually lost 25 pounds since school started. Additionally, the mother insisted that Connor was angry with the world and had told her that he wanted to end his life. So she told authorities that she believed that he had done just this, and at the same time, he had taken his sister Brinley with him. Detectives would soon find, however, after speaking with other people who were in Connor and Brinley's lives, that Connor was not bullied at all. And he had also never expressed thoughts of harming himself. Upon talking to others, police additionally discovered that the children were actually terrified of going down into the basement, and they never played down there alone. An occupational therapist who'd previously worked with Connor told investigators that the young boy had dexterity problems that made it difficult for him to do things such as tie his shoes. Therefore, it would have been very difficult, if not impossible, for him to tie the dog lead or even maintain his balance on the chair. Another witness also came forward to authorities and told them that Lisa had recently been very depressed, and she stated that she no longer cared about her kids. Then it was found that the mother had texted another friend saying that she was worried police would find her searches that she had done from Connor's Google account, in which she had looked up ways to kill someone. She also told this friend that she expected to be arrested in connection with her children's deaths. But since she had a clean criminal record otherwise, she expected that she would be released on bail shortly after, and at that point, she planned on ending her life. Now, Lisa's Google searches in the days and weeks leading up to Connor and Brinley's deaths had included a website on how to hang yourself and included searches for "I almost got away with it" best episodes. During their investigation, police had also discovered something extremely vile on Lisa's electronics, something they were not at all expecting to find. Just weeks prior, the mother had sent at least 3 explicit photos of her engaged in sexual acts with a dog to someone on Facebook Messenger. Not long after finding these disturbing photos, close to 2 months after Connor and Brinley had died, on December 2nd, 2019, Lisa Snider was placed under arrest. She was charged with first-degree murder, endangering the welfare of a child, and tampering with evidence. She was also charged with 1 count of intercourse with an animal and 1 count of cruelty to animals. So while police were pretty confident that Lisa had been the one who caused her children's deaths, the one thing that they could not figure out was how exactly she had gotten both of them up there hanging from that raft. Toxicology reports had found no traces of drugs in either Connor or Brinley's systems. And with Connor being close to 150 pounds, they're not sure how exactly she had pulled it off. In September of 2024, 41-year-old Lisa Snider would be found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder, endangering the welfare of a child, and evidence tampering. She was later sentenced to 2 consecutive sentences of life in prison without parole. The next mom I have to talk about today is Evelyn Boswell's mother, Megan Boswell. She's another of the world's worst mothers, and let's just say she's being described as being similar to Casey Anthony, Kaylee Anthony's mom. Evelyn Mae Boswell was born on November 21st, 2018, to her father, Ethan Perry, and her mother, Megan Boswell. At the time, Megan was only 17 years old. Her father was also very young. He was only 19, and he was in the military and would be stationed in Louisiana for much of Evelyn's life. So after the little girl was born, her mother had full custody of her, and they lived along with Megan's father and Megan's younger siblings on the family compound, located in Blountville, Tennessee. Once she had Evelyn in her life, Megan, who had come from a very tumultuous upbringing herself, claimed that she now had a purpose in life, as well as a reason to wake up every day and better herself. The little girl just made her world a better place, she said. So from the time that Evelyn was born up until December of 2019, she and her mother had been living with Megan's father, Tommy Boswell. Then in December, they had moved out and moved in with Megan's new boyfriend of only a few weeks, Hunter Wood. And he lived with his parents. Just a couple of months later, on February 19th, 2020, Evelyn's grandfather, Tommy, would call Child Protective Services and say that he was worried about his granddaughter because he had not seen her since Thanksgiving. When police contacted Evelyn's mother, Megan, to do a welfare check on the toddler, she claimed that the little girl had actually been with her father since December. According to Megan, he was now refusing to return their daughter or return her text messages about Evelyn at all. But the mother never reported her as missing to police. She said this was at the advice of her own dysfunctional mom, Angela Boswell. Now, this information that Megan had given to officers about Evelyn's father having her proved not to be true. In fact, prior to Evelyn being reported as missing, Megan had told him that their daughter was in state custody. At that point, an Amber Alert was issued for the baby girl. By now, Megan's story about her daughter's whereabouts had changed, and she spoke to a local news station, saying that the reason why she had never reported her daughter as missing was because she knew who she was with, and she didn't want this person to run with her.
Feeling worried or anything along those lines?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that at all?
Well, the reason I didn't report it or anything is because I knew the person who had her, and I didn't want them to run away with her, and as soon as they thought anything was going on, they just kind of vanished. Mm-hmm. So I'm just worried about, like where they're at, what they're doing with her at this point in time.
So you do know who has her? You do? Can you tell us who that is, or you don't?
I can't release anything further about that. I'm sure they will at the press conference, but further than that, I can't say anything.
Mm-hmm. And so you do know who has her. Are you worried about her safety?
Well, now I am, because they won't answer phone calls. They've just kind of disappeared.
So from the very beginning, local and state law enforcement was becoming very frustrated with Megan, who was clearly lying to them and leading them on a wild goose chase looking for Evelyn. They did, however, believe that the toddler was still alive at this point. Then Megan changed her story yet again, and she told officers that it was actually her own mother, Angela, who had her daughter. According to her, Angela had been watching the little girl when she went to work one day, and then she just never returned her. But when officers scoured the campground where Megan said that Angela and Evelyn would be located, as well as 2 other campgrounds nearby, they found no sign of them. Then, once investigators were able to speak with Megan's mother, she told them that she had actually had a falling out with her daughter back in September. And that was the last time she had seen her granddaughter as well. Megan had informed her that the little girl was removed from her custody in December and then placed into foster care. So police at this point decided they needed to speak with Megan's boyfriend Hunter, the one whom she had moved in with after she had moved out of her father's trailer. But he told them that he had never met Evelyn. According to Hunter, Megan had told him that the toddler was staying with her father Ethan, who was home on Christmas leave. He was under the impression that the two shared custody of Evelyn, which was not the case. With all these conflicting stories that Megan was giving to everyone, including authorities, she was finally placed under arrest on February 25th and charged with falsely reporting information to police. The search for Evelyn was still ongoing, and a little over a week later, on March 6th, detectives received a tip from Megan's father, Tommy. He told them that they should search his other property that was located about 3 miles from the trailer where they had previously looked. Here, behind a storage shed on the property inside a playhouse, in a trash can, was where authorities finally recovered 16-month-old Evelyn Boswell's body. The toddler had been placed upside down in the trash, and she was wrapped tightly in foil, a blanket, and a black trash bag. Megan Boswell was then charged with 2 counts of felony murder, 1 count each of aggravated CA, aggravated child neglect, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse, and failure to report a death under suspicious, unusual, or unnatural circumstances. This was in addition to her 12 counts of making false reports to investigators. The mother pleaded not guilty to all her counts, and she was held on a $1 million bond. Authorities stated that baby Evelyn had died of asphyxiation, and her death was determined to be a homicide. Megan, however, denied hurting her daughter intentionally, and she informed investigators that Evelyn had actually died while co-sleeping with her. She stated that both she and Hunter had been sleeping in bed with the toddler, and when they woke up the next morning, Evelyn was unresponsive. The forensic pathologist, however, said that could not be true, because the 16-month-old was too old to have died in that manner. Then in June of 2024, Megan would be handed more charges in relation to Evelyn's death, after it was determined that it was premeditated and intentional. She was indicted on a charge of first-degree murder. Detectives believed that the mother had hurt her little girl the same day that she had moved off of her own father's property, which was also the same day that she had an altercation with Tommy in regards to the little girl's well-being. Supposedly, not long before this, Evelyn had fallen off the bed and broken her arm. So Tommy gave his daughter hell for not watching his granddaughter better, and during this conversation, he also offered to keep Evelyn in his care, but Megan had refused. Now, those who knew the mother said that she was a manipulative narcissist who would stretch the truth about anything to get her way. They also said that Evelyn was frequently dirty and had bad diaper rashes quite often. It's also been noted that Megan would keep her daughter away from people who cared about her, just to be petty when she was angry with them. This has led many to believe that Megan killed Evelyn because she was angry with her own father, Tommy. Just like Casey Anthony did to Kaylee Anthony when she was angry with her mother. And while the little girl was lying dead in a trash can, Megan was going out living her best life, spending lots of time with her new boyfriend Hunter. They went to places such as the aquarium, where it seemed she couldn't pass up the opportunity to smile for a photo. Though technically Evelyn wasn't dead the whole time, as a forensic examiner stated that the little girl had actually been placed inside the trash can, still alive. In February of 2025, Megan Boswell was found guilty by a jury in the death of her daughter Evelyn, and she was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 51 years before she's eligible for parole. Another absolutely awful mom is Jaylen Candelario's mom, Crystal Candelario, who thought that it was perfectly acceptable to leave her not even 2-year-old daughter home alone for 10 days while she went on a vacation. Then she had the audacity to act surprised and upset when she came home to her little girl dead. Jaylen Candelario was born in Cleveland, Ohio on January 26, 2022. And after that, she lived full-time with her mother, older sister, and grandparents. At the beginning of June of 2023, Jaylen's grandparents took a vacation to Ecuador, taking Jaylen's 7-year-old sister along with them. Before they left, Crystal told her parents not to worry about her and the baby because they had no plans to go anywhere. Now, not long before this, in early 2023, Crystal had actually been hospitalized for 2 months due to problems with her mental health. Once she was released, her and her boyfriend at the time, who was Jaylen's father, made the decision that they would take a vacation in June to help her feel better. The trip would give her time to relax and forget about all the things that she had been dealing with emotionally. But not long after they made these plans, Crystal and Jaylen's father began having difficulties in their relationship. And shortly before June, they split up, meaning that their trip was now also canceled. This breakup, combined with the fact that she knew she was no longer going on the vacation she had dreamed of for months, and that she was now struggling with being a single mother, made Crystal's mental health go downhill even further. So when she saw her parents leave for their trip, Crystal made the insane decision that she also needed to get away by herself right then and there. Impulsively, she threw some things into a suitcase, grabbed her keys, and left her 16-month-old daughter, Jailyn, behind in the home all alone. The little girl was in her pack-and-play with just a few bottles of milk, and Crystal would be gone for an entire 10 days. When she did finally decide to return back home on June 16th, shortly before 8 a.m., she found her daughter not breathing. Ridiculously, the mother sounds panicked and alarmed in the 911 call. But really, what did she think was going to happen, leaving a 16-month-old home alone for an entire 10 days? When first responders arrived, they found Jailyn inside her crib, completely filthy. She was not breathing, extremely thin, and covered head to toe in urine and feces. Her eyes were sunken in, and she appeared to be very dehydrated. The pack-and-play that she was in was also heavily soiled, as well as all the blankets that surrounded her. Sadly, there was nothing that could be done for little Jailyn, as it looked like she had died days prior. In police body cam footage, her mother seems rather calm and even tries to blame the little girl's death on her not eating. Crystal casually tells officers that she could not understand what happened to Jailyn. She claimed that she'd been home all week, and the little girl, who normally slept 12 hours, just didn't wake up on June 16th. Of course, given the state that they'd found the toddler in, authorities weren't buying this story, and so they further questioned the mother. Eventually, they would get Crystal to admit that she had left her daughter in the playpen over a week prior, all alone, on June 6th. That morning, she had driven from their home in Cleveland to Detroit. Once there, Crystal stayed with a man for a few days, before she then took a flight to Puerto Rico on June 8th. After that, on June 11th, she flew to Michigan, where she stayed with a second man before finally returning back home on June 16th. Sickeningly, on Crystal's Facebook profile, she had posted many lighthearted photos of her trip, including one that shows her on the beach, all taken while her daughter was home hungry, thirsty, and terrified. Crystal captioned one photo in Spanish and it said, "Time enjoyed is the true time lived." So she enjoyed her time there, all the while never worrying about Jailyn, who was home slowly dying. Authorities also noticed that in an attempt to hide the clear neglect that her daughter had suffered as a result of her terrible decisions, Crystal had even put new clothes on the toddler's body prior to paramedics showing up. So on June 17th, 31-year-old Crystal Candelario was placed under arrest. She was charged with murder, aggravated murder, child endangerment, and felonious assault, and she was held on a $1 million bond. The little girl had likely died 2 or 3 days before her body was discovered in her playpen. During their investigation, police found by watching Ring video doorbell footage that this was not the first time that the mother had left her little girl unattended. In fact, Crystal had abandoned Jailyn just 2 days prior to her vacation as well. Authorities discovered that the mom had people to help her babysit Jailyn too. And not just her family either, but also multiple neighbors who had watched the little girl on previous occasions. In fact, Crystal had left her daughter with one neighbor the previous summer, saying that she would return after the weekend. But then she kept making excuses as to why she had not come back yet, and Jailyn remained with this person for an entire 6 weeks. Though I guess at least she had someone watch her daughter this time. Police also found that in phone calls that Crystal made from jail in November and in January, she talked about how much fun she had on her trip, making it seem like she was rather unremorseful for what had happened to her daughter. Come to find out, Crystal had previously been prescribed antidepressants, and just a few weeks prior, she had come off of them cold turkey. Coming off of some antidepressants can lead to some serious mental and physical side effects. Not that that's any excuse whatsoever for what she did to Jailyn. Then in February of 2024, to many surprise, Crystal accepted a plea deal, and she pled guilty to aggravated murder and child endangerment, resulting in the dismissal of her other charges. She was later sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At the time she accepted her plea deal, the mother spoke out in court. This was the first time since her arrest she had said anything, and claimed that she was struggling with a deep depression. The reason Crystal claimed that she had taken this trip without Jailyn was so she could deal with her emotional stress. And she insisted that she never had any intention of harming or abandoning her daughter. She just had to get away. She also stated that she prayed daily for forgiveness, and her daughters were everything to her. Her whole world, and they were both in her heart wherever she went. Which is incredibly hard to believe. The next horrible mother is that of 5-year-old Kamari Holland, Christy Seipel. And while she wasn't the one who was directly responsible for her daughter's death like these other mothers were, she did something equally as awful that led to her death. Kamari Holland was born on November 23, 2016, to her parents Kamari Holland and Christy Seipel in Columbus, Georgia. After her parents split, she lived full-time with her father Corey and her little brother in Phoenix City, Alabama. This was because her mother, 35-year-old Christy Seipel, also known as Christy Hoskins, previously had the custody of her children revoked after she was charged with chemical endangerment of a child that she'd given birth to in February of 2018. In fact, Christy wasn't even supposed to have contact with her kids at all. But on December 12, 2021, she would show up at her ex's house to see Kamarie and her brother completely uninvited. Corey was a nice guy, though, so he would invite her inside to spend some time with the children. At one point, the father would go into the other room, with Kamarie coming in shortly after. She told him that she was going to spend the night with Mommy. This caught Corey completely off guard. He knew that the mother was not supposed to be spending time with the children alone. There was even a court order against it. Regardless, he would agree to letting Christy take Kamarie and her brother overnight. He would say that he had okayed this because the mother seemed to be in good spirits and she was not under the influence of drugs. But Corey had mostly agreed to this because little Kamarie seemed so excited to see Christy, and he didn't want to disappoint his daughter, especially so close to Christmas. This, however, would prove to be a huge mistake. Because the very next morning on December 13th, 2021, Christy called up police and told them that she had awoken around 5:50 that morning to find that her front door was open and her 5-year-old daughter Kamarie was missing. However, when officers arrived at the home on Bowman Street, they would find that there was no signs of any forced entry. So a little suspicious already, they decided to check the mother's phone records. And they found that she had been communicating with a man named Jeremy Williams the night before. Once police ran his name, they saw that he was in their system from a few days prior, after a victim had reported that he sodomized her. This woman had also stated that during the attack, which happened at Jeremy's home, he had called her by the name Kamarie and told her that she gave oral as good as a little girl whom he had taught to do it. This made authorities decide that they had enough probable cause to arrest Jeremy, and they pinged his phone at a motel in Phoenix City. Shortly after, he was apprehended and brought down to the police station for questioning. Around the same time, officers began searching the home where Jeremy lived with his wife, looking for any clues as to Kamarie's whereabouts. While there, they spoke with his wife outside and told her that they were investigating a missing persons case. Jeremy's wife, with a sheer look of terror on her face, then told authorities if anything happened to that little girl, she would be at a home in Phoenix City. The address was to an abandoned property that Jeremy had once rented. So police would go out to the location that the wife mentioned, which was on the 1600 block of 15th Ave. And when they did, they discovered the body of 5-year-old Kamari Holland. She was lying naked on the floor of the basement, and she had marks all over her like she'd been tied up. The little girl was in a stirrup position, similar to when women go to the gynecologist, and she had numerous injuries, including bleeding between her legs. It was determined that Kamarie had been brutally SA'd, and her cause of death was asphyxiation. There was also methamphetamine found in her system. Following this discovery, 37-year-old Jeremy Williams was charged with capital murder, and he was held without bond. Then, just 2 days after her daughter had been discovered dead, just 2, Christy decided to take what would have been Kamarie's Christmas presents and go donate them. While she was dropping them off at the toy drive, Christy spoke with a reporter on camera.
She was a very sweet child. She was beautiful. Sweet soul. Thank you. And I seen this and I touched my heart, so I stopped. That's what she was. Mommy, let's help that mommy. She's like that. She's like that. We were at the gas station one time and we seen a family out there, and one of the little girls didn't have shoes on, and she said, "Mommy, we can help them, mommy, because I have so many pair of shoes at home, mommy. Let's give them my shoes, mommy." I'm coping. I'm making it. The media's making me look like I'm some evil person, but I'm not. I'm a mommy, and I did not have nothing to do with this. She was my life. I lived for her daily. She was my only girl. I had 3 boys and her.
Was she your youngest?
She was no, I have one more under her. I have my son under her.
Her sadness seemed insincere, leading many to think that maybe she had something to do with her daughter's murder. A few days later, on Christmas Day, Jeremy, who was behind bars, confessed to what had happened to Kamarie that night. He also admitted some other horrific things, including being responsible for the death of his 1-month-old daughter back in 2005. So Jeremy claimed that he had known Kamarie's mother, Christy, for close to 6 months. The two had been friends who would sleep together and smoke meth with one another. The night before Kamarie had been reported as missing, Jeremy stated that Christy had asked him to babysit her and her younger brother while she went on some prostitute calls. According to Jeremy, he was shocked that the mother had asked him to babysit, especially since he had previously told her that he liked to perform sexual acts on kids. So of course, he told her that he would watch them. And once Christy returned home, Jeremy claimed that she was well aware that her daughter would be leaving with him, as they had previously agreed that he would pay her $2,500 for 1 hour of Kamarie's time, though he later stated that this number was negotiated down to just $1,300. Then Jeremy admitted that he wasn't even going to pay Christy anyways because he didn't have any money. But he knew the mother wouldn't call police because she had committed a crime too. So on the way to Jeremy's home on 15th Ave with Kamarie, he had showed the little girl some pornography. And he told her that she was to do the same things to him. However, the little girl declared that she would not do these things, and so Jeremy punched her in the head. Once they'd arrived at the home, Jeremy smoked some meth and made Kamarie partake as well. Then he forced her to perform oral sex on him before raping her multiple times, both while she was alive and when she was not. Jeremy had choked Kamarie until his hands went numb. Then he started looking for an open grave near the home. However, once the little girl's mother called his cell phone, he told her that he was stuck in traffic. And when Christy continued to call, he decided to lie and tell her that he had already dropped Kamarie off and she had ran inside the house on her own. Now, police would discover that during the time Jeremy had been assaulting Kamarie, he had taken 6 videos of the acts. This would land him with further charges of production of CP. The recordings also resulted in the sick son of a bitch being charged with abuse of a corpse for the things that he had done to Kamarie after she died. Following Jeremy's confession, Kamarie's mother, Christy, was also placed under arrest. She was charged with murder during the course of kidnapping, murder during RAPE, murder during the course of sodomy, and human trafficking in relation to her daughter's death. Making her an even worse mother, if that's even possible, her arrest had taken place after Kamarie's funeral, and Christy still did not attend. Kamarie's father, Kamari Holland, issued a statement after the mother of his children was arrested, and he said, "The amount of pain Christy has caused by ripping Kamarie out of our lives will never cease. We are glad to see that she has been arrested. We are one step closer to justice for Kamarie. We hope that justice is served. Christy should receive whatever the maximum penalty she can get." He went on to say, "She's a monster. A real mother protects and would die for her children. Christy is a monster. My family will continue to wrestle with the loss of losing our angel Kamarie." More than 2 years after 5-year-old Kamari Holland was killed in March of 2024, her mother, Christy Seipel, pleaded guilty to her charge of sex trafficking Kamarie, which took her charge of murder off the table. She was then sentenced to 20 years in jail and also agreed to testify against Jeremy during his trial. Not long after, in April of 2024, Jeremy Williams entered a guilty plea on his charges. But under Alabama law, in order for him to get the death penalty, a jury trial must be held. He had entered into a blind plea, and so no deal was given to him. During his trial, multiple other victims of Jeremy's testified about the horrible things that he had done to them as children. The jury was also forced to watch an entire 11 minutes of Jeremy making Kamarie perform oral sex on him. This further cemented his fate, and he was found guilty on 4 counts of capital murder, and he was sentenced to death. Our last downright horrific mother belongs to Amber Lucius. Her name is Laura Coward, and she had the mentality about her daughter, if I can't have her, no one will. Amber Lucius was born on August 18, 2005, to her mother, Laura Coward, and her father, Dwayne Lucius. At the time of this story, she was 9 years old and was about to begin 4th grade at Griffith Scott School in Millet, Alberta, Canada. Amber's parents had split up in December of 2007 when she was about 2 years old after her mother had filed for divorce. While she and her husband Dwayne had previously had a relatively happy marriage, this had changed after Amber was born. According to Dwayne, Laura had transformed into a completely different woman than the one he had met years prior. Now she was getting angry much easier and much more frequently, leading to many fights between the couple. There was one particular night that had led to the filing of their divorce. Just a few months back, after Laura had made dinner, she sat her and Amber down at the table, then asked her husband to come join them. But Dwayne told her he wasn't hungry and didn't want to sit for dinner that night. This was a big mistake on his part and resulted in a huge fight breaking out between them. During this argument, Laura lost it and she screamed at Dwayne that he better sit at the table or she would cut their daughter's throat. Then she grabbed a knife and held it to Amber's neck. Now, following their split, the couple shared custody of Amber. But regardless, she still primarily lived with her mother, Laura. The mother had also started to try to get full custody of her so that Dwayne couldn't see her at all. Laura then moved hours away to Smoky Lane without informing her ex. In court affidavits seeking custody of Amber, Laura claimed that Dwayne often did not take his medication for his epilepsy, and it caused seizures, so he was not able to properly care for their daughter. Though this was something that Laura had actually known about him for years, and she also knew that he had not had a seizure since he was 18. The mother had additionally written in this affidavit that Dwayne would have outbursts of anger. This made her fear for both her safety and Amber's. Not long after, Laura began denying the father multiple court-ordered visitations with his daughter. She blocked Dwayne's phone number and refused to pay for her share of his travel expenses, since she had decided to move so far away and he now had to travel hours to see Amber. A custody assessment that happened in 2011 found that Laura constantly thwarted her ex's attempts to be in his daughter's life. So Dwayne had repeatedly applied for sole custody, and Laura was repeatedly asked to pay for her share of the costs. But she had been laid off in the fall of 2009 and had gone on unemployment insurance. She claimed that at this point, she was having trouble paying for any court proceedings or even Amber's asthma medication as money was so tight. Adding further stress was the fact that police had to be called multiple times during custody transfers. One time, Laura told officers who showed up at the scene that Dwayne had been screaming at her and hitting her. Then in April of 2012, Laura had alleged that Amber didn't even want to go with her father because he had angrily grabbed her. The courts repeatedly noted that arrangements weren't working, and Dwayne was doing everything he could to get full custody of his daughter, so he didn't have to deal with Laura's nonsense anymore. And eventually, in June of 2013, a court order mandated that Amber go live full-time with her father. Amber was thrilled to go live with Dwayne, who lived with his parents on a farm. But the disputes between the former couple still continued. Because even though the girl's father now had full custody, she was still mandated to go on visits with her mother every other weekend. This wasn't enough for Laura, though, and she was not happy about it. In order to start spending more time with her daughter, Laura decided to move again, this time closer to Dwayne. And after she did, the Canadian police would be called several times about their disputes. During a visit in April of 2014, police had to get involved after Laura did not return Amber to Dwayne on time. Luckily, she ended up dropping Amber off at a local police station shortly after. Then, on August 28, 2014, Dwayne brought Amber to her mother's house so she could spend the weekend with her. Just days prior to this, his official divorce from Laura had been granted, as well as his full legal custody of Amber. Like many times in the past, on August 31st, the day that Amber was expected to be returned to her father, Laura didn't show up. And he couldn't get a hold of her. So Dwayne decided to get in his car and drive over to the mother's apartment. But once he got there, he realized her car was gone, and there were new people moving in. These tenants told Dwayne that Laura had actually moved out the week prior. After calling his ex-wife's sister, who also had not seen the mother and daughter, Dwayne decided that it was time to file a police report, and the search for them began shortly after. And it lasted for days with no results. Then, on September 2nd, 2014, police received a 911 call, but the caller hung up. However, they were able to trace it, and it would lead them to a property that belonged to a friend/ex-boyfriend of Laura's. And there, they located her red Ford Escape SUV. The vehicle had been completely damaged by a fire, and inside, authorities made an even more horrifying discovery. It was 9-year-old Amber's body, and she was also very badly burnt. Police found a handwritten note on the outside of the SUV's driver's side door that read, "Help me. It was an accident. Locked keys in." Shortly after authorities arrived on the scene, Laura came casually walking out of her friend's house, and she was then apprehended. The mother was charged with abducting Amber in violation of a court order, along with breaking and entering and theft, which involved an RV that belonged to her ex-boyfriend. These charges would later be replaced with first-degree murder. Once she was in custody, Laura Coward admitted to causing her daughter Amber's death either late in the day on August 30th or on August 31st. She and Amber had driven to a remote area after she told some friends that she was going to take her daughter stargazing. But instead, on the evening of August 30th, they went to a Tim Hortons for dinner. After their meal, the mother and daughter got back in the vehicle, and Laura drove down a dead-end road near a remote rural property. This property belonged to her ex-boyfriend, Nick Smith, and Laura knew that he kept the keys for his residence inside his RV, which is where her breaking and entering charge had come from. So she had gone into his house and grabbed some medication. After she parked at the edge of the property, she then grabbed these sleeping pills and administered a non-lethal dose to both her and Amber. The medicine left them both unconscious for a period of time. And when Laura awoke later, she checked on her daughter and she thought she was dead. She wasn't, though. Amber was only unconscious. Laura then set the vehicle on fire and fled the scene, only returning an undetermined amount of time later after the fire had self-extinguished. While the mother admitted to authorities that she had intentionally caused her daughter's death, it had not been in the way she intended. When Amber's autopsy was performed, it was determined that she died from a combination of hyperthermia, smoke inhalation, and carbon monoxide toxicity. And even though Laura had informed detectives that Amber was killed on August 30th or 31st, they were able to determine that she had actually died the same day they had found her body, on September 2nd. Laura Coward would go on to accept a plea deal at the beginning of 2017, in which she would plead guilty to a lesser charge of second-degree murder. This resulted in her being given a mandatory life sentence with a minimum of 18 years behind bars before she's eligible for parole. So those are some of the world's worst mothers, women who should never have been given the title and should never have been allowed to give birth to begin with. Let me know if you liked this list type of video in addition to my normal ones, and I'll make another. Since unfortunately there seems to be endless awful people out there hurting others. Also, don't forget, if you want to watch any of the full episodes on these cases, which go into more detail about the children who suffered at the hands of these monsters and their selfish acts, then check out the description box below for links to the previous videos. If you like true crime and you want to hear it from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and turn on your notifications too, so you'll know when I upload a new video, which is at least 3 times every single week. Thanks for watching A Wicked World today. Until next time, take care guys. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon, so check it out on patreon.com/awickedworld. Or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims are never forgotten and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a story you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email to awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.